right, welcome everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today for our webinar on what you should know for Amazon peak season. So as you know, we're well into Q4 and it is peak season on Amazon for sellers with the holidays upon us. And there are a lot of supply chain challenges and issues that sellers are well aware of, but consumers are also well aware of these issues as well. So many of them have hopped on their holiday shopping early. So while it's only mid-October, there's definitely a lot of revenue and items being sold on Amazon. The competition is fierce as always in fourth quarter, but even more than ever. And I'm excited to have two of the industry experts joining us today to help to guide us through some of these fourth quarter challenges and give us some tips to help you all be more successful in fourth quarter. So from SellerSnap, I have Ellie Engelberg, who is the CEO and co-founder of SellerSnap. So hello, Ellie. Thanks so much for joining. And from Verte, we have Stephen Bullard, who's the Senior VP of Operations there. So thanks for joining, Stephen. Good. So today, just a couple of things that we'll cover. You probably saw this in the email or the registration page when you registered. But the things that we're going to talk about today are repricing strategies for Q4. SellerSnap, they are experts on repricing. We're going to talk about how to overcome inventory restrictions, what to do with that excess inventory that does not sell. Hopefully you're not in that situation, but we know it often happens. And what the benefits are to using a fulfillment network, where we'll talk about strategies to maintaining a high IPI score, because we know how important that is. That is crucial to your success on Amazon to reduce those storage fees. And we will also talk about return and reimbursement analytics. And then looking ahead to first quarter, it can be challenging to forecast with all of the seasonality changes from Q4. So we will touch on that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and close my slide deck here so that we can just talk as a team here. So let's kick it off with Ellie. I think you're on mute, Ellie, so just make sure to unmute here. But let's talk about how fourth quarter, the market is competitive as always, but it's even more important this quarter to have a strong and smart repricing strategy in place due to the changing conditions. So what are some of the challenges that fourth quarter brings to Amazon sellers when it comes to repricing?
Well, again, judging on previous years, it seems like during Q4, the competition is as if it's put on steroids. So the same things happen. Sellers come in and leave. And there's sellers that run out of stock, but the frequency of which this happens is just much higher, and you'll see changes within days, and something that you've been competitive on and been selling well might completely change in a matter of a day or two, and so. Whereas maybe the rest of the year you can get by with a simple repricing rule, it becomes, I think, more critical to have a good automated solution to keep track of everything. Because just for example, you might be competing against FBA sellers that go into back order, which we know is makes them far less likely to win the buy box, and obviously you're at an advantage if you have a fulfillable stock. And so you want to price against such a seller differently than you would against another FBA seller who is, who's comparable. Also, again, like I said, because a lot of times you see new sellers come in and sellers sell out. There's two different things to consider here. First of all, you want to be quick. You want your repricer to be quick to react if a competitor is out of the market. And so maybe having a competitor drove prices down a little bit, but the second that they are no longer have a fulfillable quantity, you can make a bit more profit. The other side of that is you don't necessarily want to react too quickly when a new seller comes in, because what will happen a lot of times is the seller is just listed the product and might test it at a price that's too low. And typically, what our automatic repricer does, but I would recommend anyone to do anyway, is not to adjust too quickly to a new seller. So if everyone's selling something for $20 and someone comes in at $17, it doesn't make sense to immediately jump down to be competitive. It's good to give like a day or so to see if the guy comes to his senses and aligns with what was previously the accepted price. But other than that, I think the same general rules still apply, which is to, you want to try to maximize your profit while keeping a reasonable buy box share. So you don't necessarily want to become too aggressive because again, the chance of price wars also increases. You want to keep, again, the same strategies apply, but you want to be a lot more on top of things.
Right, good. And obviously in fourth quarter, sales typically increase, but sellers run into those replenishment issues, inventory cap issues, Amazon restrictions. From a repricing perspective, what can sellers do to avoid running out of stock?
Well, there's two things. The first is general strategy that I think most of our customers that do FBA have is a lot of times they'll have two listings. So they'll have an FBA listing and an FBM listing as backup, and they can both be active. And what our AI repricer would do is prioritize. So as long as your FBA listing is fulfillable and competitive, that is the one you're pushing and trying to get buy box share with. But in the instance that immediately when it either becomes back ordered or is out of stock, you have this backup. So the FBM listing gets the priority and will start repricing competitively until you're able to replenish in Amazon. That's again assuming that you have your own inventory in the warehouse. Another thing that you would do regardless is you could apply repricing conditions. This applies generally to different things. What it means is you set a condition, and if that condition is fulfilled, the repricer will change its repricing method. So you could say, okay, you're trying to win the buy box at a certain percentage. But you could say, okay, if my fulfillable quantity drops below a certain threshold, I want to be less aggressive, or I'm going to increase price. I'm going to set my price maybe based on being above the lowest FBA seller or something like that, so that I'm kind of, the result will be probably I'm going to slow down my sales a little bit, maybe make a little bit more money, but not run out of stock.
Okay. Well, yeah, and obviously running out of stock, aging inventory, there's a lot of things that go into IPI score as well. So, this year especially, high IPI scores have been a necessity for sellers who require that the high page rankings and a significant buy box share in order to increase sales. But that aging inventory has a negative effect on those scores. So what tips do you have, or what strategies can sellers use to make sure that inventory age doesn't impact their IPI score?
Well, that's the I think the opposite side of the coin of what we just discussed of running out of stock.
Right.
Here it's first of all, data is important, and again, it's important. What we try to do is provide as much inventory relevant data, not just your velocity and your inventory value and such, but a breakdown that Amazon provide of inventory age based on groups. I think they go like 0 to 108, 0 to 90, 90 to 180, something like that they have it grouped. And then again, as I mentioned before, you can set a condition. So you could say, okay, if I have more than X items that are older than, let's say, 270 days or 90 days, or it doesn't matter, I'm going to change my repricing method to be more aggressive. So I might say target the buy box, where in general, the AI repricer is never going to aim for 100% buy box if there's competition to avoid price wars. But you could overrule that and say, I'm going to win 100% buy box, and it just become aggressive. And you can combine that with some other things to try and increase price every now and then. So you could tell the repricer to jump up in price every X hours, again, to try to pull the market up. And you would also want to monitor the competition in your minimum prices. Again, if you're trying to get rid of inventory, to make sure that you're not stuck because of a minimum price threshold that you have. And it's we're talking general, it's a business decision that you need to make. How eager are you to get rid of something, and how much are you willing to sell for? But that can definitely be done. So you can control how aggressive you are.
Okay. Yeah, and there's a program that Amazon has, the Fba liquidations program. So if you've exhausted all other avenues and you're getting to the end of Q4, especially if you have seasonal items that just won't sell at the beginning of next year, You could look into the FBA liquidations program, and that's where sellers can try to recover some value from that excess inventory and customer returned items. So rather than your inventory being disposed of or returned to you, Amazon will send it to wholesale liquidators instead. The recovery is typically only about 5 to 10% of an item's average selling price. So again, it's a business decision that you need to consider. And to liquidate your inventory, you simply just create a removal order and select the liquidations option. There are some fees that are incurred, but if your IPI score, if you're struggling with having an high IPI score, then this is something that you'll definitely want to consider, because FBA sell-through rate is a crucial component of your Amazon IPI score, and that excess inventory will bring down your score. So if you choose to submit a removal order through the FBA liquidations, your IPI score won't be influenced while the inventory is pending removal. But once the inventory is liquidated or removed, then your sell-through rate should improve, because that excess inventory has been reduced. So, and that, of course, improved sell-through rate leads to a better IPI score. So even though you might not make as much revenue, only 5 to 10% of the selling price, if it's going to help your IPI score, it might help in the long run.
I think it just what you said just completes the I think argument that you need to be on, especially now, you need to be on top of the data and see what's going on, because obviously, as you said, it's worth to be in the beginning when you still have chance of selling. It's better to sell maybe a 50% discount. You're still going to make more money than going to FBA liquidation. So have it like a step in, and as a last resort, as you said, if I'm I've exhausted all other options and I'm stuck with it, then
Right. And you might even want to experiment with creating kits or bundles as another way to handle excess inventory. So if you have, some common products that people tend to purchase together, or maybe that you might, suggest that people purchase together, then creating that kit or bundle can be another way to get rid of that inventory. And our tool, our inventory management tool, Restock Pro, can help with that as well. So before you even consider liquidating excess inventory, if they've purchased a significant amount of inventory and they've predicted a higher velocity, are there any other repricing strategies or anything else for fourth quarter that you want to mention that they should consider when it comes to repricing?
Well, again, I think there's always all sorts of specific cases that we could go into. I think in general, as you said, it's between two fronts. Is either having the good problem of selling a lot, but then getting stuck without inventory, or having inventory that's not moving fast enough. And really, there is a limit to what you can do in selling, because again, in the end, it's influenced by demand. So in some cases, even if you're super aggressive, you're not going to move it if there's no demand for the item. So again, I would say make adjustments if necessary more frequently, and check the data frequently. Check your numbers to see what's going on. See what's going on with the velocity. See what's going on with competition. Is it something where you had 3 competitors and now all of a sudden there's 7, 8, and all these things can maybe help you be a bit preemptive and know in advance that something's going to get stuck and act accordingly.
Okay. And if somebody does not have a pricing tool in place or a good pricing strategy right now, how quickly can they get set up with Seller Snap? Knowing that we're already into fourth quarter, what would you suggest, or how long is that timing to get set up and start using your tool?
Yeah, setup is very fast. I think it takes I would say up to 1 hour to pull in. The only not challenge, but the only thing that takes time is to pull in the data from Amazon. Once you authorize us or any third-party solution, you grant access to your Amazon account via API, and I'm sure you guys all know this. You pull in data. I think it would take about an hour to have all your listings, everything, and historical sales for the past 30 days, which is a good benchmark when you start to see like what your numbers are. And then really setup depends on again, hoping that you're organized and that you know your costs and have some idea of what your margins should be and what you want your minimum price to be. it can be done in a few minutes, because all the automation is there. Fees are being pulled in automatically. Again, if you upload your costs or have them pulled in from an inventory management system, the repricer is good to go immediately. But then again, I think it's more familiarizing yourself with the different data points that then allow you to evaluate and also make adjustments if necessary. So you get started, and then you say, okay, let's look a day, 2 days, 7 days into it and see where it's going. And also find the pain points, because you might find, yes, my price is too high because I have 100 units in stock and I set something at 20, and my minimum price is $20, and yet it's selling for 15 in Amazon. And I need to, if I just stay there, it's not going to happen. So make the adjustment immediately, and don't just sit there and later on figure out, oh, I was not competitive and I wasn't selling.
Okay, very good. So there's still plenty of time to get set up.
There is definitely
fourth quarter and make an impact. Good. All right, well, switching gears a little bit, I want to talk with Stephen. Have some questions for you. Stephen, how can a retailer support FBA while creating value with the same inventory and other demand channels? So in other words, can they have their cake and eat it too?
Yeah, they sure can. And they can do that by leveraging an independent third-party network outside of Amazon. So we talk about omni-channel, and here at Project Verte, we include FBA in that argument now. So you have your D2C, your retail, wholesale, store replenishment, and we actually talk about FBA prep being really the fourth component of omni-channel. And what that means is leveraging your inventory across all of those channels out of a single facility or single distribution network that can support all of those equally. And so the idea is that you can bring your same inventory that you're bringing in that's being gated by Amazon, while it's sitting there being waited to be prepped or sent to Amazon to support the FBA. That same inventory could be used for FBM if you qualify, or it can be opened up to other demand channels so that you can actually sell it, that same exact inventory, to other demand channels out there, so your Walmarts, your Targets, your Shopify's. Okay,
great. Well, and I know Project Verte helps manage Amazon sellers and aggregators, businesses. You have many, many clients. So you're aware of all of the challenges these sellers face today. How can Amazon sellers overcome the inventory restrictions?
Yeah, so the best way to overcome the inventory restrictions with Amazon is to support what Amazon's asking, right? So you can still bring your product in. You just need to have another source to be able to bring that inventory into, have that inventory ready, so that as Amazon indicates to you, here's how much product you're allowed to bring in, here's how often you can bring it in. That inventory can be brought in mass. It can be staged in a single facility. That prep work can be done to support the FBA prep work. But again, going back to what I was talking about, that inventory can be leveraged for other demand channels. So that inventory is not statically sitting there, not being supported by FBA. It can actually be supported to other demand channels. So you can still generate sales from that same inventory.
Okay. And so you mentioned FBA prep, but can you explain a little bit more specifically, how does a 3PL help with that FBA prep, especially when it comes to preparing for the holiday season?
Yeah. So specifically when I talk about FBA prep, what I'm talking about is that any true wholesale environment, which FBA prep, FBA fulfillment by Amazon is, there's very specific requirements about what that product needs to look like when it's shipped into an Amazon distribution center. And so FBA prep means that you're taking product that potentially is coming from overseas or OEMs that you haven't seen, or you don't know exactly what it looks like. And we go through that product, we make sure it's the right product, the counts are right, it's then configured, it's built correctly, it's labeled correctly, meeting all the FBA requirements. And then that product, as it's shipped into the Amazon distribution network, it matches all the requirements. And that's more important, really, than even your typical retail compliance, because in a typical retail compliance environment, there'll be fines that you deal with if you're not meeting those retail compliance. With Amazon, it could actually impact your sales, your status. your actual ability to sell online. So it becomes really critical that you have a partner that understands all the requirements to actually be able to do that FBA prep work that's shipping in there.
And so if I'm a seller and I'm considering moving from my own fulfillment center to a 3PL, what are some things that I should be looking for to making sure that I choose, a good 3PL company?
Yeah. And to me, it breaks down into 6 or 7 really key things that you should really, when you're sourcing a 3PL to support your business, especially if you're a digital native or you grew up in the FBA network, that first initial outsourcing, you need to understand that Amazon does things really well, and they make things invisible to you, that once you go outside that Amazon network, that you'll need to be able to support. So first thing is you want to make sure that the 3PL partner you're talking to has the technology to truly support the things that you need. Is that demand channel connectivity, unit of measure is very important, that they really are built to do omni-channel fulfillment from a technology standpoint, that they have the technology stack to support that. The other thing is experience. Definitely make sure that you go kick the tires. Make sure that 3PL partner has experience in doing D2C, that they have experience doing wholesale retail compliance and actually supporting FBA prep work. And then, this is redundant, but they have that really true omni-channel capabilities. Make sure that they absolutely have the capability, the experience, the processes, and the technology to support omni-channel. And what's really important to the last two from my perspective is understand their pricing and terms. So the biggest heartburn I think everybody has when they first go out to a third party is what they price versus what they get invoiced. They have a disconnect. It's hard to audit or understand what they're really paying for. So when you do, make sure that you understand what that 3PL is pricing and make them do a pro forma, right? So make sure that you have a sample set that you can compare apples to apples, and that you understand what that pricing versus invoicing is going to look like, especially on accessorials. And the last thing is scalability. And that's probably, as you grow, make sure that the 3PL you're picking can scale with you, not only in the facility, that if you start with a single source facility, make sure that they can grow not only regionally, but nationally with you.
Yeah, and I think finding somebody that meets all those components is important, because hiring a fulfillment network or using a fulfillment network can really impact your customer satisfaction. And we know how important customer satisfaction is on Amazon. We, at eComEngine have our Feedback 5 tool. So we're talking with customers every day about, feedback and reviews and how to get more reviews, how to get better feedback. So customer satisfaction is crucial. So how can a 3PL help improve a retailer's customer satisfaction?
So effectively, Amazon does a really good job of that, right? So that's one of the reasons they have the rules that they have, is so that it supports it, basically the Jared McGuire principle, that you help them help you have good delivery experience to that customer. So when you outsource it, or you're using a network outside of Amazon, you need to understand that 3PL really is going to be your primary interface to your customer base, right? So you're going to own that transaction. And so you really need to make sure that 3PL is geared for that, understands your requirements from packaging to service levels, where the communications are going to be. So that's really critical to understand that and make sure that your 3PL is partnering in you in a way that supports that.
Yeah, and fulfilling from multiple locations obviously improves.
Yeah. So the idea around when you partner with a 3PL, and I'm sorry, Colleen, I didn't get to that particular point.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I know we talked about it yesterday, and that's a big piece.
Yeah, so multiple locations. What's the benefit to having multiple 3PL locations? And it really is, at the end of the day, having multiple fulfillment locations means you're closer to market, right? Just means that you have more product closer to customers. It's what really defines what Amazon does really well. And what the benefit to you is that you have faster delivery times. You're generally going to have cheaper last mile costs. That means that cost from the distribution center to your final customer is going to be cheaper. And The other intangibles are there's few opportunities for delays, right? So the closer you are to market, the less you are susceptible to weather, capacity, any of those other variables that can impact. And then last but not least is just what that package looks like when it arrives to your customer, right? So the closer you are to the customer, the less touches there are, the less handoffs there are, meaning that that the package, how the package arrives will look better than if it's farther away generally.
Good, thank you. So I'm going to just answer a question here from the audience that came in, and somebody's asking, what is the biggest mistake you see sellers make around Q4? So either of you are welcome to answer that off the top of your head. What is one of the biggest mistakes that you've seen that sellers make in fourth quarter?
I can jump in really quick and then hand off to Eli. From my perspective, it's planning, right? It's really not understanding the full capacity of what peak season planning means, right? So it's making sure that you've ordered it in time, that you can get it through the port and get it to a distribution center so that it's available for sale. It's making sure you're working with your partners to make sure that they've made sure that and again, I'm talking outside the Amazon network, that they have carrier capacity to support your sales in fourth quarter, and then over communicating with your vendor base, with your 3PL base, to make sure that you're aligned with your expectations in terms of volume and capacity. To me, that's the overwhelming mistake that people make, is underestimating or under communicating.
Anything you want to add, Ellie?
I agree with Stephen completely. I think that's, like, again, from our side, because we are a repricer, obviously our customers apply the strategies that we recommend anyway. But what I can say in terms of repricing, because we analyze the competitive landscape for every listing, so I can see how other sellers behave. You can see that some sellers are not making right price decisions during that time. So either being overly aggressive, or on the other hand, just being left behind, or so not updating in time, and things change, and you'll see that there are FBA sellers that clearly have inventory that are just priced out of the competition, and other things like that. So I would say, yeah, that's another aspect of it, is making sure that if you're already listed, that you're competitive.
Okay, very good. Stephen, we have a question for you. How do you improve your restock limits?
So in terms of outside the Amazon network, so an outside 3PL network that you're working with, that's just a matter of working with your 3PL to make sure that they understand your capacity, your needs, your inbound volumes, your outbound volumes, and they plan for it. If you're talking specifically about FBA restock limits, I won't speak for the group, but everything indicates that those will do anything. The only thing they're going to do is go down. Amazon doesn't want to be in the business of stocking; they want to be in the business of selling, and so very much so. I think that everybody needs to be prepared for the fact that those limits will continue to either shrink and that you'll have to ship in more product more often. And that's where it really becomes critical from my perspective to have another partner that can help you bring your product into scale, bring inbound volumes in that you normally would, and then be able to hold that inventory, prep it, and support your FBA program, and then alternatively have other demand channels to support that volume that you're bringing in. So hopefully I answered that question appropriately for.
Sure. Yeah, we actually have a blog post also about the FBA restock limits, so we'll share that as well for anyone to refer to. And another question here for Stephen, does a 3PL ship both into FBA and act as an FBM? I think you kind of addressed this earlier, but maybe you could just clarify.
Yeah, so the short answer is they can. And ideally, I mean, in a perfect environment, that's exactly the kind of thing that you want when you're sourcing out to that 3PL network. That's where I was talking about that truly omni-channel capability, right? So you're going to find 3PLs do certain things really well. They do pallet in, pallet out, or FBA prep work. They do wholesale retail because that's what they've done for a long time, or they're built to do the D2C business. That's where it really becomes, because the act of supporting FBA and FBA prep is really carton level, pallet level shipments. FBM, you have to be very good at D2C. And so that's a unit of measure issue, that's a system issue, it's a process, it's an experience issue. So the short answer is, if you want, when you source your 3PL, make sure that they can do both. And because the issue is, if they don't support your FBM well, you don't have to worry about the FBA. But
good point. All right, and we have a question for Ellie. Can you explain the game theory repricing strategy?
Yeah, sure. So that kind of goes into what I mentioned briefly, but it's a little bit more theory. It doesn't relate necessarily to Q4. The idea here is this: you are, as a seller on Amazon, all other things being equal, and if you're a buy box eligible, and your price is okay and everything is fine, you're competitive, your share of the market is going to be determined by a bunch of external factors. So it's not, and I know a lot of times you hear people say, oh, be successful on Amazon by getting more buy box or by so and so. And the reality is that that's in a competitive landscape, that isn't the case, because, and this is where game theory comes into it. It's a repetitive game, so it's not a one cycle kind of a prisoner dilemma. And so you making a price change affects your competitors, and their actions affect you. So let's say you're up against one other seller. You're both 50% of the buy box. You trying to now gain more buy box share because you think it's going to increase your sales, you make more money, in effect doesn't work. Because if you lower your price, your competitor, and this, by the way, under the assumption that most professional sellers are using some sort of a repricing software, will not remain indifferent. They will react. And a lot of times what will happen is to within the limits that everyone is willing to sell a product, you might end up with the same 50% buy box share, same share of the market, just at a lower price. That's all that's going to happen. And so the idea behind using game theory, and it's a bit of just a general term to describe it, it's not, is to apply a repricing strategy that assumes that you're going to share your market with other sellers, but try to do that at the optimal price for you. So really avoiding price wars, but also maximizing on profit where you can, by different needs. So by analyzing behavior, you can see that if you can detect that you have a seller that's matching your price, increasing price is beneficial for both of you, because if they're matching your price, you go from $20 to $25, they'll follow you. You'll both be at $25. Again, all other things being equal. And of course, you can price outside of the markets. If you charge something that the customers are not willing to pay, then it's not relevant. But usually we're not talking about that. Usually it's like within margins that are acceptable. Does that answer it?
I think so. Interesting. Good. All right. So those are all the questions that we have right now. Feel free to add more questions in. We have a few more questions that we will go ahead and ask for Stephen and Ellie, but feel free again to add any of your questions in the chat or Q&A, and we will address them. All right. So let's kind of talk about, as you get to the end of Q4 and there's holiday returns, they're bound to happen. Ellie, what can you tell us about, the value of returns and reimbursement data, or how analytics could help? I know your tool does offer some data and insights there. So maybe you can speak to that.
Well, I'll say that again, we at SettlesNap getting started, we're focusing on creating the most intelligent, let's say, automatic repricer. But it was clear from the start that analytics and data is an integral part of that, because otherwise you don't know what you're doing. And as we've grown as a company, and the more experience we've gotten, we've learned the importance of this, and we're constantly expanding on this. And really, the approach is to have as complete as possible P&L for a listing. So when it's not enough to say, okay, I sold for this much, and this is my cost, and this is my profit. Because obviously, if you have an item that has a lot of returns on it, and if you get reimbursements or those returns are your fault or for whatever reason, all that affects your bottom line. And so, when you might, if you disregard these, you might say, oh, this is a very good item, it's profitable. But once you factor in returns, reimbursements, other parameters, storage fees and advertising costs and such, but specifically on reimbursements, that has an effect on, your decision-making moving forward. Because you might want to say, okay, if I have a very high return rate on an item, might affect, my decisions in restocking. And reimbursements, again, it's just to get a clear picture of P&L per listing. So you see if you're actually making money or not.
Check out and see that SKU profitability. All right, Stephen, what tips do you have for managing holiday returns? Anything from the fulfillment or warehouse perspective?
Yeah, again, this goes back to, kind of communication with your 3PL, 4PL partner. Returns are generally going to fall into two major buckets. You want to make sure you're having conversations with your 3PL about how you want to manage those two different buckets. The first is your standard return, right? So it goes to an undeliverable address, that's carrier refused, it's a client refused, and that package effectively gets back to the 3PL in the same exact form that it shipped out in. And it's clearly something that can be processed quickly and put back in inventory for available to promise. You want to make sure that you have clear instructions with your 3PL that kind of return, there's standard pricing, a standard process, and that they execute getting that return back in inventory as quickly as possible. The second is the return that needs a little bit of work, right? So whether you're in apparel or anything else, that product comes back, it's been opened by the client, it needs to have some sort of rework or validation or quality inspection, any of those kinds of things. Before it's put back in inventory, you want to have a very clear conversation with your 3PL about what your strategy is. Do you want them to hold that and consolidate that back to some sort of consolidated return center? Do you want to work through that 3PL directly to manage those returns with you? But have those conversations up front. So what doesn't happen is you end up with a big pile of not so good looking product that you can't sell, and the 3PL doesn't know how to manage, sitting on a dock somewhere. The quicker that becomes a mess, the harder it is to clean up.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And obviously those holiday returns or refunded items are also more at risk to get negative reviews if they're not happy with the item and they're returning it. So when you're requesting reviews, make sure that you have a process in place that automates excluding any refunded orders from requesting reviews. Our Feedback 5 tool can easily help with that. All right, so let's see, looking ahead at first quarter, we know that there's a lot of seasonality changes between fourth quarter and first quarter, so it can be challenging to forecast for Q1. What recommendations do you have for sellers as they prepare to forecast for first quarter? Either one of you, if you want to answer it.
My first answer is going to be start now. So historically, I know that we've all looked at fourth quarter and kind of get singularly focused on getting through peak. The reality, I think the new world, the new environment, the new retail, the post-COVID environment that we're in is that you need to start planning first quarter now. You really need to understand what your plan is. There are new peaks that we're seeing across the board. And so I think the days of getting through fourth and then looking at first are over. And I think you need to start planning first quarter now.
I agree. All right. So we already had a question actually just came in asking if there's a discount for signing up for Seller Snap. There absolutely is. I will go ahead and share the special offers while we address any other questions that are coming in. So Seller Snap, as Ellie mentioned, it's an AI algorithmic Amazon repricer and analytics tool. Lots of data. Data is king. So it's an awesome tool, and they're offering a 15-day free trial and 10% off a month for your first 3 months using the link below, which my coworker Becky added in the chat. So feel free to sign up for that. I will also send out an email with all of these offers and how to contact them if you have any questions. And then Stephen, do you want to explain your special offer? For Verte? Oh, I think Stephen froze, it looks like, so I'll share that. So Project Verte is an AI cloud-based supply chain platform that optimizes your FBA fulfillment. And they are offering 5 integrations included in the program up until December 2021 if you sign up soon. You can check out their website, and we put their URL in the chat as well. And then lastly, our tools that I briefly mentioned, Restock Pro is our FBA inventory management tool. We are offering a 60-day free trial right now, as well as for Feedback 5 to get more reviews and feedback this holiday season. When there's more sales and more orders, you can definitely get more reviews, but you got to make sure you're asking for them. So 60-day free trial on that. Just use coupon code Q4-2021, and you can sign up at eComEngine.com. And we will hang tight here for a couple more minutes, see if there's any other questions that you have on any of the topics that we just discussed today or otherwise. But if you need to sign off, we certainly wish you all a happy Q4. Hope you have a very successful season. But
Yes.
again, anything that you want to ask our experts here, feel free to fire away in the chat. Any other last minute tips if Stephen or Ellie has, feel free to share as well.
I would say, again, going into Q4, from our perspective, in terms of being priced competitively, set up, if you're not using a tool, set up a repricing tool. There's different ones out there, even setting up, and again, depending on who this applies for, even setting up just Amazon's own repricing option in Seller Central is better than nothing. And so it has its disadvantages, but it at least makes sure that you're not stuck at a price that's not relevant. And so I would definitely say, there's something in here coming out, how to fix pricing health, min and max. So I'll answer that in a second. So I'm saying set up something. What we at SettleSnap do is and we see this, and it's, by the way, it's welcome and really acceptable, is we see people coming in just for Q4 and using the repricer, and we know some Amazon stores are very seasonal, and then they'll use it for the months that they need it and stop using it, in January, February, and that's fine. So I'm saying, even if you don't need a repricer for the entire year, because whatever business you're running, Q4 is a good time to make sure that you're competitive. Now I see someone asked how to fix pricing health, min and max price. Not sure I understand. I'm not sure I understand exactly. Are you saying as far as Amazon are concerned? Because,
maybe Kapil can clarify that question. And it looks like Jamie has one also related to repricing.
Okay, just a second, only sir. Okay, your own brand pricing tool help. Yeah. So the question regarding if you own the brand. So setting pricing private label if you're the brand owner is a challenge, and it's something that we've been thinking about and trying to come up with solutions for years now. To specifically answer your question, yes, we can track multiple similar ASINs. You'd be able to say, okay, ASINs 1, 2, 3, up to 10 different ASINs. Set a rule to have your price adjusted based on the price of those ASINs. So you could say, okay, I want to follow the lowest price of these, or whatever, or the one with the best sales rank, or different options. So yes, that's definitely one way to go, and really depending on what you're selling, in some cases that's the best option, to just make sure you're competitive against the comparable items. But again, it's a very, it really depends. If it's exactly exactly comparable item, that's very easy. If it's a bit different, then it becomes more complicated. It's like not an identical item.
Okay. And Jamie asked a little bit about, for me to ask or talk a little bit about how Feedback 5 works. So Feedback 5 helps you to automate feedback and review requests. You can either automate the request a review button, which is found in Seller Central, which is 100% compliant because the Amazon message comes directly from Amazon, or you can automate buyer-seller messages. So we also do product review management in Feedback 5, where you can track ASINs, whether they're your own ASINs or competitive ASINs, to track those reviews and get a lot of different analytics on those. So happy to give you, a brief demo of that anytime. But yeah, during fourth quarter, make sure you have a review strategy set up because it's a great opportunity to get more reviews and set yourself up for success in first quarter. All right. I think we are, I think that's, the end of the questions at this point. So thank you, Ellie and Stephen, for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Everybody who joined today, thanks for being here. I'll be sure to send out an email with all of the special offers and a link to this recording so you can watch it again or share it with any of your teammates. And best of luck in Q4. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much, Colleen. Best of luck to everyone. Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Yep.
Take care. Bye.